Hello and welcome to Retro Encounter episode 124 of Valkyrie Profile Part 2. I'm your host, Robert Fenner, and joining me today is Hilary Andreff.
Hi, welcome back.
And I think in an unforeseen circumstance, we have another panelist joining us for Part 2 of this podcast, and that's our wonderful social media manager, Sybydlo.
It is me, Stephanie. Yeah, I'm here too. I saw you guys did the first podcast. I was like, oh no, I missed it. And then I just kind of budged in and said, hey, me too now. Let me in. Three's company too.
I'm all for it, and I'm all for the singing as well.
There'll be a lot of that.
Steph, you've picked a great time to join us because we left off at the end of Chapter 3 in our last episode. And Chapter 4 is where things really start to get real in Valkyrie Profile, and we start to see...
The first 3 chapters are very tutorial, I find.
They kind of are, aren't they?
Yeah, which is good. You need that many chapters to get into it, I think. Mm-hmm. And to get used to everything.
What did you think, Hilary, of what we covered in the last episode?
I mean, I definitely agree, though I will say the first time I played through the game just without using a guide or anything, I did a lot of plot-related things early because I was interested in, like, checking all the locations out, so...
The game really has a way for you to play it. Like, it's pretty specific.
It's that special, like, JRPG/Tri-Ace obfuscation that it would really benefit from telling you, at least guiding you a little bit of saying, like, okay, here's, maybe leave this for later, or here's actually what this does, or this game explains so little.
It tries, and then it just kind of nods. It pans out. The first time I actually played the game, I was was when it came out. I was maybe like 12 or 11.
Oh yeah, I meant to ask you about your first experience with this as you were joining us late. So please, Steph, go right ahead. Tell us.
It all kind of works out because I kind of only did the first 3 chapters the first time I played. So the game was way too difficult for me when I was a kid. I just didn't get it. It didn't sink in. The gameplay was too tough. I played it even on easy. It just didn't really work out. So I actually beat Valkyrie Profile 2. Then I went back to this one when it came out on the PSP, killed it and loved it, and played it a few times after that. But I remember getting confused by even little things. When Valkyrie goes, we have no reason to be here, as one of the ending quotes for her battle thing, I thought she meant that literally, and I tried to leave. And in my defense, I was right, because I was in the Cave of Oblivion.
Oh, right, well.
There you go.
I was so confused, so the first time, basically, it just didn't work out. But the second time I played it to death, and I loved it. It's in my top 10 for sure.
I mean, there are whole systems that I didn't even really know about until playing it again for this show. Like I knew about transmutation, but I didn't know exactly how deep this crafting system went with hidden items that are found in Lizard's tower and just all this stuff.
It's cool though. Once you get into the swing of things, it's a fun game and it's really easy to breeze through it.
Absolutely, yeah.
Hilary, you said you played on hard mode, right?
I did, yes.
All right, so you and me are the winners here. Robert, you just went normal?
I went normal. I tried to... I was originally going to go for ending B, and then I decided I was going to go for ending A, and then I completely messed up, and I ended up getting ending B. So... Okay. We'll
that's good, because I think
you
Hilary
go?
And I know the A, so we can kind of fill in the gaps, and you kind of give us, what you saw.
Great.
I barely made it. I made it, but I barely made it this time.
Who could blame you? The stipulations for ending A are so ridiculous. I don't know how anybody without a guide could actually figure it out.
Yeah, I was sweating it in chapters 5 and 6. I had to coordinate it down to exactly when I was wearing that ring, exactly when I was recruiting my last few people, and I think less than 10 points. I made it by less than 10 points.
Oh. Yeah, otherwise it locks you out. But I do like the fact that hard mode is actually technically one of the easier modes. Barring for 2 dungeons, the Tower of Lizard Valeth is incredibly hard, and probably the Ruins of Ameti or whatever, the very Egyptian one. I think were the 2 hardest dungeons. So appropriately for hard mode. But yeah, I actually really like the hard mode dungeons a little bit more too. I think they're really interesting.
Me too, and it was my first time for a lot of them actually, because previously I think I'd only played to about chapter 4 or 5 on hard mode. So yeah, some of them were new to me, and definitely, it seems like they utilized a lot their design vision. Like you can't really see the extent of it unless you play through all those hard mode dungeons.
I like it though. They actually feel like a whole new breed of dungeon. Like each dungeon seems to have a different identity anyway. Like I love how each of them looks different, feels different, plays different. Like I remember one of the Eastern ones has that kind of like shifting idea in it, inside of it. One of them is like a math-based dungeon. One of them is like very biological looking on the inside. It's creepy and gross. Like they're all very unique and very different, but there are a few normal dungeons I know that you miss out in favor of hard ones, so maybe you could fill us in on that one.
But it is in chapter 4 where things really start to kick off and the plot becomes a thing. You one of your spiritual concentrations leads you to Flensburg, where we first encounter Lizard Valeth, who is this evil wizard, and his ogre, who's like a kind of to episode 1 listeners, he's like an orc in bootcut jeans, and they are kidnapping women left and right. And Lizard, he's something of a foil to the Valkyrie. He's like an anti-Valkyrie. He's a necromancer who is raising demons through the power of the goddess Hel.
The role is really interesting because they don't really finish up with it, but he's so integral to the plot despite being evil and not really a boss of any sort.
He's a boss, but such an entrance.
Yeah. And how, but I mean, he's just a really cool character to the series because he's the best. He's the best magician on the planet, and just kind of interesting to kind of follow along with that.
He's a handsome boy. He's diabolical. He kills his teacher, which is what brings us to his tower. Lorenta, the headmistress or top teacher of the magic school, was his teacher, who expelled him for his dabbling in the dark arts, and he kills her and her husband on the roof of his tower, which is not out of really any revenge, but just as a way to lure Lenneth.
To lure her out,
yeah. And you've got to love the way he like addresses it with her too. She comes, like, once you get through the tower, she comes up to him and is like, "So for the sole purpose of luring me here, you slaughtered them?" And he's just like, "Yes, actually, I did."
I got some homunculi.
I really like the profile picture he had for when he's like in a cat body or something. It looks like this really skinny little cat picture, and it's kind of realistic looking, so it's really, really cute. I'm like, "Aw."
That's what he does after he kidnaps Lorenta's husband. That's how he tells her.
Yeah,
the husband is at his tower and how he lures her there. That's right.
He sense is familiar with that freaky face.
Yeah. That was a really good dungeon, though. The Lizard Valeth Tower, like, it goes on forever, and it is a proper difficult dungeon too. So I'm happy he gets his reign on that one.
It's a real spike, and like it's really like the first like
the further
giant
you go
challenge.
the harder it gets.
Yeah, I spent so much time there. I'm not gonna lie.
The song there is really cool, though. Hard Chain Reaction.
Yeah, the music's amazing.
Oh yeah. It's kind of fun too, because I guess that whole PSX era of Triace games, they kind of just let Sakuraba do his thing, go all out, crazy instruments, crazy techno, guitar, etc. The second one is a lot more subdued. It suits it better. It's more classical sounding. But yeah, the rockin' tunes in this one are just so much fun.
And
that battle victory theme is just so cool.
It's very reminiscent of his work when he was with Wolf Team. It's got a very kind of like Arcus Odyssey vibe. This sort of just like completely schizoid, just going all over the place, whether it fits or not. I really, really like the soundtrack of this game.
It's so cool, yeah, because it really pumps you up. Like, what's the main battle theme? What's the main battle theme called? Battle with God Syndrome, or just some unfinished Battle with God Syndrome, or some variation of that. Like.
It's kind of hard to tell with his track titles sometimes what
they're trying to say.
What they actually are, yes.
But it sounds cool, and hey, the beat matches. I never got sick of the battle system in this, and Lawfer never left my party.
Yeah, this is the first time that I was actually able to make some use of Lawfer. I was using him completely wrong in past playthroughs. I made a lot of use of Lawfer this time around. I felt that he had diminishing returns the first time I played due to his
Purify Weird Souls kind of, I think, has a low hit count, right?
It's pretty bad.
It's strong, but it's not that good. Yeah.
But he can really have some crazy damage potential with some high-level spears. as the game goes.
Oh, I love that one spear name, the dinosaur, the Great Spear Dinosaur, or something like that.
Crazy.
Like,
Yeah.
There's a lot of cool named weapons in this game too. I did like what you guys said though. Like, this is a Norse mythology game, but it has nothing, like barely anything to do with the actual Norse.
Oh yeah, not at all. It's
just in name only.
Like more so than like a Final Fantasy game, but just only that tiny smidgen.
Yeah. And one thing I do like, too, is there's, like, a lot of anachronisms, too. Mm-hmm. What was it? I know, like, Mystina is wearing, like, at one point.
Yes, when she's talking with Lazard. She's, like, in a robe and, like, these giant...
She's having a drink and she's listening. It's great sprite work, though. Lazard Ballot looks nothing like his picture. Yume is firing a gun, like a finger gun at one point.
Yeah, that's how she starts battle, huh? It's almost like a King of Fighters taunt. She's like mature in Vice or something.
I do like Jail, though, the way she's kind of jumping up and down on the spot. And Cashel, who's kind of really low to the ground. I think he's the long blades guy, and he's kind of really low to the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you've got to appreciate that, how you can tell that his sword is actually heavy.
Yeah,
a little bit.
It works in favor of having all of your party members have a unique silhouette, which is like character design 101.
Yeah, no, that's actually a really good point. And all the characters are very nicely designed as well.
Speaking of that, I just need to say how happy I am that Lyneth is short, relatively speaking. I don't know why. Yeah.
Good things in small packages, yo. All of her sprites and animation, though, are absolutely top-notch. Like, I cannot get sick of looking at her on screen. Even though she does a bit of a Naruto run, where she's got the arms behind her back. But I love her stopping, and, like, her dress and her hair kind of, like, goes in the wind a bit.
Yeah, that ever so slight pushing forward.
It's so pretty.
Yeah, and a lot of her actions, like, when she's doing the crystals, or when, like, confronting bosses, like, they all look good too.
Pointing her sword, turning her back, all sorts of excellent sprite work on display there.
And for how rough and rusty some of the voice work is, I really do like her voice. She finds a really good balance between being kind of loud and authoritative, and still kind of dropping her guard at times.
I think between her and Maddie Blaustein's work as Arngrim and Lizard, I think they're like the two who are really carrying the voice work in this game, whereas the rest is like kind of veers between serviceable and just like laugh out loud hilarious. Especially when Ash Ketchum takes to the stage. Yeah, like they tend to really dramatize some. It works because it's a very sad world and a very sad game of slave traders and such. Oh yeah, the slave traders have like sunglasses on. Yeah, they're like the Men in Black. Oh my god! But yeah. So there's like, I do find it cool though that I think Ville Noir, where Platina's originally from, is a village in Valkyrie Profile 2 before things go bad. It's like a very lovely, pleasant village, but I think afterwards, like, the market sinks, nobody goes there, and they start selling their children off. I think Vilnor is the capital. It's like the imperial capital, is it? I forgot. Wherever Platina's from. It's not Artolia. It's...
Platina's from Coriander, which is near-ish
That's it.
to Artolia.
Yeah, it's like on the border between Artolia and Vilnor, isn't it?
Yeah, Coriander is exactly what it is, yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, can we just take the time to appreciate how great the world map is?
Oh, hell yeah.
Flying around it is just such a cool feeling.
Yeah, we didn't really talk about that last time.
No, we really didn't. It's like, I don't know, it's like having the airship in Final Fantasy VI, but in a very...
away.
Yeah, in like a very, very grim way. I guess like a more apt comparison would be to like flying around in Flammy, since that doesn't really correspond one-to-one with what's going on in Secret of Mana. But, it's this sort of detachment that, you are, like, almost kind of like ActRaiser, you are completely above everything, and then you go down into this, like, micro level, but it's a completely different way of looking at it from this, like, overseer god, and then, in disguise as a townsperson.
Did you all play the PSP version, I guess?
No, I played the original.
Oh, really?
I played the original because my PSP no longer works.
Oh, cool. Okay. Because I was going to say, I was actually kind of happy I played and beat Valkyrie Profile 2 because it made the whole Japan segment a lot more interesting.
Yes, we need to talk about that.
Yes, we
Yeah,
do. I'm
we
sorry.
do.
I know I'm going all over the place, but I'm just taking what comes. I didn't really have a chance to play. I actually played a bit of my file, which fortunately took place after Chapter 4, after Lizard's Tower.
Right on.
It was a file I had going. But yeah, no, there's just so much cool shit to talk about with this game.
Yeah, so do we want to just finish up talking about Lizard and then go to Japan?
Yeah, okay. We do have a good schedule. Sorry, let me look at that again. Okay. Weeping Lily. How on earth did Lucian not die? He's got super lungs.
Did he just run away and just leave Platina's body there? Or is it just, is it just
let
the plot being the plot?
Well, you've got to wonder, because there's a grave marker there, so it sort of implies, but how?
Very good point. Very good point.
The men have stronger lungs. They work in the mines. No, I don't know. No. So yeah, I guess he would have done that, and yeah, I guess he took off and became a mercenary somewhere else.
Or a thief in his instance.
Was he a thief?
Yeah, he was running the Thieves Guild in...
Right.
I've written down the name of the town. In Garabellum.
Garabellum.
Yeah, he's running the Thieves Guild with a lady named Claire. And this is like another great, interesting, grim part of Valkyrie Profile, where their story after he grows up is that their comrade Baron ends up picking the pocket of a noble, and his punishment for doing so is being tortured to death and then hung from a post. And then the army comes...
No good deed in this game goes unpunished, and I think it's a really cool theme. And at least with Life After Death, they kind of make a good use of that. You know, to kind of serve some dramatic irony. Like, one part I liked is that Lenneth was talking to one of the Einherjar, and it's like, hey, this is all Gandar's fault. And she's like, Gandar, I'll remember him. It's like, that's a threat.
So after Baron is made an example out of, the army of Garabellum, they use this thief problem as an excuse to gentrify the neighborhood, and their form of gentrifying the neighborhood is just killing every poor person in the streets, whether that is like a man, a woman, or a child, whether they have anything to do with a thieves guild or not.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but Lucian and his group, I think a lot of what they're doing is actually they are thieving mostly to kind of support a lot of those poor people because there's no other way.
That's right.
Yeah.
The Thieves Guild is sort of like it sort of functions as an orphanage at the same time, and they've got all these children living in their attic. And as they're as Lucian is trying to hustle the children to safety so they don't get burned alive, he's shot in the back by
Gowry Gabriev is so noble.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. He gets shot in the back, but like, I actually thought his story was a little underwhelming for how important his character is.
Ever so slightly, yeah. I mean, I think maybe
obviously
it's a
Yume
testament to
kind of
how...
wins for the most dramatic death irony, I guess.
Most dramatic for sure.
He went all that way, and he still had a bad life.
Yeah. Oh, everybody does, and that main town theme really sets the tone.
It does. It's fantastic.
Like, I listen to it when I need to calm down and feel sad again because I'm too chipper. Yeah.
It is seriously a way to regulate in that more like low direction.
But they do a lot of the glorious stuff too. Like, I love a lot of the glorious, like some of the glorious town themes. Like Crel Montfray has like a really glorious sounding theme, and like a lot of the themes when you're in Valhalla and all that just sound beautiful.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, like, this game really nails its aesthetic really well, I think. And I do like that they even have like a few kind of like Eastern influenced areas as well that kind of just again really, really force an aesthetic out.
Yeah, that Yamato area, Highland, is very well realized and separate from what is happening on the main continent in this world.
Yeah.
It's hard not to talk about this game and just not brag about it the entire time. And like, story-wise, I think it's probably the one time Trice actually nailed it.
Oh, absolutely. We talked about this a little bit in the last episode. It's like Tri-Ace's last game that wasn't like super pandery and fetishy.
Yeah.
I think like even Silmeria has some kind of like standard JRPG issues which are kind of absent in this game.
It did have a goofy dungeon that I thought had a kind of funny, that kind of funny humor where they talk about underwear and all that stuff, but it's still kind of funny. But anyways, yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, it avoids a lot of that, like, completely. Okay. Yeah, and then chapter 4 is where you meet Brahms as well, right?
That's right. I think you can meet him earlier if you want, but apparently, like, if you want to go for the A ending, you need to hold off on meeting him until chapter 4.
Yeah, you need to hold off on the meadow.
How are you supposed to know?
Yeah.
You're not.
The meadow. You have to beat Lizard's tower, and you hold off and meet Brahms in 4 as well.
Just to add to how difficult Lizard's tower is, I don't think you. I think you have to one and done it.
You can die.
Because
I died about 4 times trying to complete it this time.
Yes.
But you can't go back and do anything else. Like, you can't go to any towns, you can't go to any other dungeons. You just need to jump back in if you die.
Okay, so at least that's fair. But yeah, that was the one time I actually had to use Arngrim's Dragon Slayer with like a 50% break rate or something like that. Because some of the dragons in there will just immediately obliterate you and your progress.
Yeah, that's what happened to me a lot. I'm just thankful that I didn't get sent back to the title screen.
Oh god, yeah. Oh my god, I can't believe you guys have the PSX version though. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's especially rough with how many. If you're going for the A ending, how many other things you're supposed to do in that chapter? Like, I think it's the one time that I was concerned about time. Yeah. I do think for the most part, though, like, it is mostly intimidating. It's chapter 4 that really sucks, but the other ones, you should have more than enough periods to kind of, like, even veg out a bit. You should be able to go visit everybody's town and grab their super item that they leave behind when they die and all that.
I think it's kind of, like, possibly, like, a testament to this game being slightly unfinished and rushed, that, like, after chapter 4... after chapter 5 in particular, things really slow down, and you're given more periods than you are events.
Yeah, especially some of the plot moments don't feel complete. Like, I know Lawfer, he just kind of ends up dead, and you get him on your team. Like, there feels like a missing scene there. The game could have used like totally a few bonus scenes for like the PSP version, but it's still solid.
Oh, that actually reminds me of something I meant to bring up. The manga, actually. So I was curious after the last episode about Belinus and what the deal was with the poetry in his room. So I kind of started looking into it, and it sounds like the manga actually tries to tie it together.
Oh, really?
A lot of those things and how the Einherjar know each other. And according to the manga, Belinus' wife was jealous of Asaka, so that poetry is hers, and the vampire problem is actually her fault.
Ooh, I see.
Oh, yeah. Vengeful wife, man. That's actually really cool. All those death stories were actually really great to watch, too. Like, you know, what is a flower? Was its destiny to be plucked from the ground? I do like Belinus' look, though.
They should have hired you, Steph.
Oh, thank you. For the men and the women, yeah. Join Ash Ketchum. What was it, though? Yeah, okay, so when you visit Brahms, you finally get to see that there are other Valkyries in the mix. I do think it's cool that the second
first
game...
kind of part where you are... It starts to become obvious that Lenneth is being deceived.
Yeah. Yes, and you get hit with kind of a double dose of that if you go immediately from Brahms to Lizard or Lizard to Brahms, because they both hint at that. Yeah. Although Lizard's sort of like, I don't really care, I'm interested in you anyway.
Yeah. I do love Brahms' design as a vampire, though. It's you know, this kind of beefy, almost like were-vampire, like just a giant person.
Yeah.
He was a really cool character. Like I do like that at the end of the game, the bonus dungeon saves a whole bunch of like extra characters for you to just play with.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right, the gate.
But the whole Brahms thing was really cool, and I always loved meeting Silmaria and just having nothing about her really explained. So playing her in the second game was just such a treat.
Playing this again after, I have to admit I didn't beat Silmaria, but having seen a good chunk of it and going back and playing Valkyrie Profile again, I'm surprised at like just how much of that they wove in between Japan and like Brahms' castle and Lizard. Like they were prepared. Like it actually makes more sense than I was expecting it to with the first game.
The ending of Valkyrie Profile 2 is a little bit upsetting for fans, but for the most part, I thought they did a really good job tying the two games together in the best way they could.
I mean, they kind of do like a... I kind of felt that Valkyrie Profile 2 didn't... Not to get into it too much, this isn't the Valkyrie Profile 2 episode, but I kind of felt like it didn't deliver on its promise in that it was posited as a prequel, and then it got into like some weird time travel stuff that
Yeah.
kind of like tied the ending of Valkyrie Profile 1 into the plot of Valkyrie Profile 2, and
They got rid of the very main death scenes, which made the first game so dramatic, and just put it as like a little text-based story, and like, here, you can extract your dead warrior from their remains. It's like, that's not as fun. But
it's almost like a gacha-esque,
it was. It
like
definitely was.
Xenoblade 2, where it's like randomized who you get rather than...
Yeah. And
It's like one of two heroes. Some of them are better than others.
Yeah.
Ugh, and some of them have a very low chance of showing up, which is annoying.
Yeah. But I do appreciate the second game tries to change its perspective. You know, kind of like Chrono Trigger to Cross. Like Valkyrie Profile 2 is more like the mortal perspective.
It is, yeah, and that is worthy, I would say.
Yeah. It didn't quite hit the same height, but it's still good and hard. Oh my god, that game is so hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's quite a bit harder than this game is.
Yeah, like Valkyrie Profile has ways to, like all good Trias games, they have a way, like if you murk the system, you can beat the game with flying colors. If you don't, then you're going to be just pounding, finger button mashing, and you're going to do badly.
Struggling. Yeah. It's really interesting how it almost kind of like rewards you for breaking it in a way.
Yeah. That's Trias' way, basically. I love it. There's nothing like going to a final boss over prepared. You're like, yeah, I got this. And you flick your finger and they're dead. So chapter 4 is where things heat up, and then you start noticing things with your seal value, and you're intentionally lowering it, and it's kind of cool to see that your point is to intentionally sabotage the game.
Seal value not explained at all.
Not at all. Wear the ring, said nobody. Like, okay. I do love like when you're talking to Freya and you get to like talk to Urian Harrier and you see some of the other cool gods, Hel and the Veneer and like the fights. Then you got Freya. About your progress.
Yes.
It is magnificent.
I had like this joke in my head that we should have someone else from the site show up at the end of this and rate our podcast that way. Like, yes, good job, you get 2 artifacts.
Mike, or the editor, if you're listening to this, do it. Do it. He always puts in messages at the beginning of a podcast, so this time save it to the end. But no, I think it's a really cool, like, it's a very different game. No RPG plays the way this game plays, let alone the fact that it's a platformer. A platformer RPG.
And that really shows in hard mode. That's one other point I wanted to make about getting through hard mode.
The dungeons really make you jump. They make you really work your the mechanics in that one.
I mean, when Tri-Ace were Wolf Team, they excelled at kind of RPG-esque platformers, so you can really see
what
that.
What do they have under a Wolf Team?
They did the Arcus series. They did the first Valise game on MSX. They didn't do the future ones. They did Sa-Ziri, which is like this bizarre platforming RPG for MSX. They did El Viento and Ernest Evans. Ernest Evans is not so good, but El Viento is pretty outstanding.
Oh, okay. A future article, mayhaps, Mr. Robert.
Perhaps. We'll see.
Fair enough. Okay, so I think Chapter 5 and on is where things really start to get juicy plot-wise.
This is where Lucian makes his return.
Yeah, I like him. He's a noble character, and I have to say, like, one thing I think is important to point out, and kind of the reason why I really want to brag, is because I think Lyneth is like an absolute keystone for how to do female protagonists in RPGs, and I'm so happy that they let her fall in love too. Which is, I hear something a lot of developers are worried about because of like no homo kind of idea. It's like, oh, I don't want to be a girl kissing a guy. But they committed. They wanted to tell, this sort of love story, this sort of love transcending, the love, you take it with you. Ditto.
And it's not like a clean cut, like, okay, we're together now, everything is happy. Like, she
you earn it.
If I'm remembering correctly, like, she's very concerned about her job, especially at first, and it's just sort of like, well, I hope we can meet again.
Well, there's that scene where if you choose to send Lucian to Valhalla, which is a requirement for the A ending, they go to Weeping Lily Valley together, and she's a little bit hesitant, but she follows him, and he asks her to remove her helmet, and he realizes...
She obviously feels something too, like, she's kind of quiet the whole time, and she kind of feels something deep down. They
both basically realize that she's Platina, and they share a kiss. And
even better, not just share a kiss, she totally instigates it.
She does,
this
she is the
goddess
driving...
it just drops all kind of idea of duty, and she just kind of goes up to him and steals a kiss. And he liked it.
And yeah, he's
something he wanted for a while, I'm guessing.
He's got his head tilted back. He's not the one in control of this situation. He's very happy to have his feelings reciprocated. And then it cuts to the scene of Valkyrie like looking down on the meadow from above and saying like, well, it can't really be this way, but as you said, I hope we meet again.
Even the like death scenes before then kind of like lead up to it, where she's like, I am a goddess, I have not time for this, into just kind of completely turning around. Her 180 is a really cool thing to watch.
She is super cold, and I wouldn't even say that she warms up, but I mean there are semblances of her human feelings there.
You went B ending though, right?
I did, yeah. Not
A
on
ending.
purpose,
she gets quite emotional. Yeah, like she full on. We'll get to that. Okay, let's move on. Okay, yeah. So you meet Mestina.
I
in
messed
chapter
up.
5.
I triggered all my spiritual concentration too early, and then I forgot to go visit Mestina. So this is what kept me away. So.
No!
I did watch the Mestina cutscene before we came to record, so I am clued in on what's going on with her. She's an interesting character indeed.
She's very she completely lacks empathy. One thing I like, and she's actually praising Lizard for taking out Lorenta.
Well, she's
only for her to be ironically killed by him as well.
Well, she's Jessie, isn't she?
Yeah.
Sorry.
She's Jessie.
It's Jessie from Team Rocket. Like, wow, Lizard! It's this really like over the top female villain.
She didn't want Lorenta in the way of her sorts of things that she wants to do, and that's kind of like a key thing about her is she has her own experiments, and she's very similar to Lizard actually in that respect. Like she values knowledge extremely highly, and she's kind of, I think they sort of have a respect for each other for that reason, and that's what you really see in this cutscene is she's in astral form, and she kind of sneaks a look at what Lizard's doing, and that's how everything gets started, if I'm not mistaken.
They're both sociopaths who are focused on different people. I mean, Mestina is focused on Lizard, and Lizard is in turn focused on Valkyrie.
That's one thing that's cool too, is like there's a lot of, there's a really big gray area between who's good and bad in this game.
I don't think really anybody is good in this game. Everybody's kind of nasty in their own way.
So it kind of but that's what's cool about it too. So there's a lot of themes of like forgiveness, repentance, and it's just a very surprisingly deep game. It's sort of hammy, but it's still, when you think about it, it has some deep themes.
Yeah, there's something there.
In particular, there's a quote with Badrak, who first appears in Chapter 1 as one of the mercenaries who is involved in the plot with Arngrim, and ends up later joining the party, and he's like a complete piece of dirt, and like the only good thing he ever did in his life was he freed a girl who's going to be sold as a slave.
From Coriander.
Yeah, that's right.
Coriander.
And he only did that to be nasty to the slavers who like only... didn't give him the full payment. They shortchanged him. And
I always kind of wondered if that was all of it, or if he was just kind of trying to cover for it. It's hard to say.
The thing about him is he seems pretty stupid, and that
so he would
maybe he would only be covering like in a subconscious level. It doesn't seem like he really has anything to hide from Valkyrie. But at the same time, he has a wife who, they don't have a great relationship, but he obviously cares for her. And when he relates this story of, his good deed, which was only to, be a jerk to somebody else, Valkyrie says, even a man who lives his life in darkness can bloom for one brief moment. And
didn't they literally show a flower bloom, too?
That's right, yeah. His wife is obsessed with planting this cactus that only blooms once a month, and you can grant a wish by reciting it to this blooming flower, and he never sees it because he's always in bed. But then, when he's crawling back from being assassinated by the powers that be of Vilnor,
that's right. It's the right time of day.
Yeah, he sees it bloom in the middle of the night. That's the last thing he sees, and I guess his wish is to live, and he becomes an Einherja because of it.
There we go. It is cool too to see a few of them kind of come back, like because of the idea of reincarnation and all that stuff. So you see a few like kind of. It was probably just to save on assets too, but I mean you see a few Einherjar come back as an explanation for like, oh, they've been resurrected. Geez, yeah, okay, that one was really cool. So Lizard is doing all of his weird, freaky homunculi experiments. I do like how the game kind of sets up its own myth and mythos and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, that's another really anachronistic thing too. Like,
yeah, he's got like
totally
a
high tech. Yeah,
he's got like a Fantasy
sci-fi.
Star dungeon.
yeah. But, you just put in quotes. He's a super genius. And especially when JRPGs do super geniuses, I mean, like they already have spaceships in their basements. And it's like medieval ages. It's like, no, it's fine. They're just that smart.
Okay. What do they say? They say that his tower like exists outside of time and in all times, a bit like Chrono Trigger's Black Omen. So, I mean, it's a hand wave to have his technology, but it's still interesting.
Yeah, Mistina says that she's impressed that he's figured out how to. I think she's wondering like how powerful is he actually, because he was able to shift this huge tower so it's interdimensional.
I still love that Lizard actually takes her out as well. Like, they kind of have this mutual friendship, but as soon as like something's in his way, it doesn't matter to him. He just freezes her inside of a stasis. I like how you go visit there after and they still haven't cleaned it up. Like, ah, shoot.
Clearly, many problems at the Magic Academy.
Yeah, they need some help.
I do like going to visit. Sorry, I know we're backtracking a bit, but I love visiting Nanami, who's sort of alive.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we need to talk. We didn't talk about her because
I
recruited her. And you did, Robert.
Hers was a really weird story, but I loved it though. Hers and Yume's too, where it's like she's trying to find her father, who was just fooling around anyway, and it meant nothing.
Yeah, I like Yume's story quite a bit, but Minami, I'm not. I don't think I'm sure.
You don't remember it?
No.
So I think what it was so the shrine owner's daughter had passed away really young or something like that, and so they adopted Nami. But what it is that her spirit was still alive. Yeah. The original daughter's spirit was still alive and eventually took over Nanami, and it essentially killed Nanami, and the original daughter got to live in her body.
Yeah, Nanami... Nanami
she's grateful, so it all turned out good, but...
Yeah, Nanami decides to go through this ritual to prove that she's worthy of inheriting the shrine and, prove that their bond is thicker than just blood, all that sort of thing. But then she encounters the real daughter's ghost and
That's
says,
right.
"Whoa, yeah, this ghost has more pain than I do. I'll switch with her." And that's how she becomes an Einherjar. She lets the original daughter kind of take her place.
Like between this and like the Cave of Mirrors, the Shintoism in Highland is doesn't seem like it's really serving anybody very well.
The world in general doesn't seem to serve anybody really well, and it just turns into a big old shit sandwich by the end. But I mean, like everyone has a bad time, and it's still a very beautiful story. It's all about beautiful deaths, essentially. And if you could go one way, then you might as well go in quite a sight. Nobody's death is really lost without something happening. Or somebody else feeling it. So, it's beautiful.
Yeah, because let's see, the other two characters that you see from there are Shiho and Suo.
Yeah.
And there it's sort of like an all-out war story, and they meet each other, and they kind of connect, but Suo Superior just immediately kills Shiho because she's this song maiden that basically turns, the enemy soldiers into berserkers, so the superior ones are dead.
But she can't take it anymore, and she stops singing because she can't stand what she's doing, and she is punished by her side for doing so.
Right, and that's how she ends up where she is with Suo.
Yeah, Suo gets it when he decided to drop his arms against the people he was sworn to defend. So he had another one. Like he stopped fighting, but he still paid the price for it. But hey, you die honorably and become a hero.
When you come back and see Suo's story, like he's getting his mission details. We're like, we need to go wipe out a village that's full of assassins who were disguised as villagers, and like you just read that and you're like, oh no. And Suo himself says, "Oh no!" And you go there, and sure enough, you see Suo. He's like raising his sword to a father who's protecting his wife and 2 children. And
he's this very scared, obviously scared looking, like the sprite's sword arm is shaking.
He's shaking and he's holding it at this
he's
very...
got a bad stance and everything too,
And,
the
Suo
sprite
knows...
detail in this game is extraordinary. Like, it is really, really well done. I love big 2D sprites too. I just think they're really, really nice looking. So
Suo knows that he's been sent on a fool's errand, and that this is just like all a lie to take over this village by force without having to deal with the politics of subjugating these people.
But like, kudos to it. I mean, I think all of us heard Einherjar for the first time in this game. But it literally does mean the heroic, like it is literally the heroic dead. Like that is what it is supposed to be. So, the idea of actually taking the souls of heroes and, getting them to fight for you is just a really cool plot.
Yeah, and it's an interesting take on the concept of kind of a heroic death because,
yes,
like you think about Norse mythology and usually the expectation is
it's already up to the heavens too. Yeah.
On the battlefield, and if you think about the characters in this game, very few of them actually die in a battle.
Yeah, really.
Suo, I guess, would technically be one, but yes, many of them have totally different kind of definition of a heroic death.
I mean,
they do really like take out the concept for as much as they can. Like everyone's story is quite different.
Every scenario is an ideological conflict of some sort, whether that is more sedate or, in Suo and Chio's case, like on a battlefield. But it is very much, everybody is embroiled in a battlefield of ideas and having, every single time it's like a terrible test of faith and morals that, everybody's kind of driven into a corner.
One thing I like too is it largely leaves Valkyrie out of it, so it's like them on their own. It's not the hero kind of offering guidance; it's just them to figure this out. So it kind of establishes them as their own self-contained character.
And I'm thinking of that with a Badrock. Like, Valkyrie shows up and she's like, actually, it's Queen Helen Niflheim who's interested in your soul.
Look, if you don't have anything good to say, I'm just gonna go.
I do like that Arngrim and Mystina can't be sent up. They're just kind of jerks and not many people are really interested in them. It's like, okay, fine, you're strong, I guess.
But that if you go for the A ending, that's absolutely key and works in Lenneth's favor.
And you get the one silly portrait in the game for the A ending between There's a really silly portrait shared by Arngrim and Mystina where they actually get kind of dopey anime big eyes, where they just look kind of stupid and they're pointing a finger. It's like, what are you talking about?
Is that their angry expressions when Lizard implies that they're all friends?
Yes. Yeah. And to me, again, it's so weird to talk about Lizard because he's obviously a villain, but we have him to thank for the better part of the story, right?
Oh, absolutely. He is like the first real antagonist and driving point that makes the story appear that everything is not as it seems, and if everything was what it seemed,
which again is why I'm really happy for his return in the second game because his arc just did not feel finished. It felt like it just kind of cut off so you could focus on the main foil.
I wish they handled him slightly differently in the sequel, but I'm still very, very happy that he returned.
I try not to think about the ending, but everything leading up to it was all right. Sure.
Yeah. Agreed.
All I know about the second one is I never want to do the Tomb of the Venerated God again. God. That was a dungeon in this one too, I think, actually. So that was another one of the dungeons. Like, oh my god, they brought it back. Yeah, that was me geeking out, by the way.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like, I was doing a little surfing around on the wiki and stuff, and there are some established connections between the dungeons in 2 and 1, like the Sunken Shrine. I think could potentially be the Temple on the Lake from Valkyrie Profile 2 at a different point in time. Yeah.
Interesting.
All sorts of little goodies like that.
The PSP version added us a cutscene, like a CG cutscene for the Japan hanging too. I do love the boss there, that the headless king. The giant. Yeah. Oh my god, I thought that was so cool looking, especially for what did happen to Barbarossa and how traumatizing it is to see his ghost is like a headless knight.
Yeah,
and you see him carrying his head around. That was like
because very, very early on, when
Sorry, I know we're jumping around.
when Jolanda's advisor, when her tutor turns out to be a necromancer, he transforms into the usual wizard sprite, and I was like, it's just because they couldn't afford to make a separate sprite for this character. So when I saw Barbarossa transform, I was like, that's a really cool sprite, but like, why has this king transformed into a headless knight? And then you complete his story and see his execution at the guillotine, and it's like, oh, well, that actually makes perfect sense. And like, this bespoke sprite is here for a reason, and I was so impressed with that.
And Japan was such a beautiful place, so like it's kind of cool to see both, it thrive and it in ruin as well. So I don't know, it's just a cool detail. Yeah, and you go back in time in it, right?
Yes. You do. We should talk about Japan and what happens here. This is another big turning point for the plot,
and a huge plot point for the second game, which is a prequel. So it's kind of cool that they linked them that way. And they do throw in what's her name, Alicia, like in a CG cutscene where she actually sees her father lose her head. Yeah, so that's a little traumatizing for the girl.
So you were sent to this dungeon as you would be any other dungeon in Valkyrie Profile, but when you get there, you encounter this ghost of this king who is lamenting why his country has fallen into ruin, and where are his advisors? And he is the King Barbarossa and the kingdom of Japan, which has fallen many, many years before. And he becomes this ghost, this headless knight who just keeps coming back and coming back and coming back. You have to fight him twice, and then Valkyrie realizes she needs to find out what has caused his suffering. Why is he being bound
Quick
to this
shout out
place?
to the awesome boss music.
Yeah.
Yes.
And he's a unique and tough boss in that he's got a lot of hit points, and the game doesn't tell you this. You need to beat him in 3 turns, otherwise he'll activate his own Purify Weird Soul and wipe out your party.
It's the first time you see enemies being able to use that great magic.
Oh, the endgame bosses get so hard for that. Yeah, basically all of them start dishing that kind of a thing out. They use your own tactics against you, essentially.
So if you just stroll into Japan, you're not going to have a great time. But like if you do, equip the right items and sort your party out accordingly, you can easily beat him on the first round.
Yeah, and it is the first time you see Hrist as well. So you start to see the cycle. The game kind of teases out its own mythology very well. Where it's like, oh, there's a different Valkyrie. What's up with that? Well, there's a cycle of them.
Here's something I didn't fully get. I got Hrist. So once you beat Barbarossa and you are going through the kingdom to find out, what happened, you end up teleported to the past and you see Japan just before its fall. And here is where we see Valkyrie Hrist walking through town, and you find that Barbarossa is being put to death for. Allegedly, he's created a time machine which has angered the gods, and they have sent Valkyrie down to make an example of him by giving him a public execution. But here's what I didn't get. Hrist says, we've got Arngrim heading up the execution, and when you go to the gallows, you see Arngrim and Laufer holding up this guillotine, and it kind of throws into question how long you've known Arngrim, or how long ago his spirit and Laufer's spirit and everybody's spirit was absorbed into, I guess, like into the gods' canon. Because at the beginning of the game, it seems like you have just been there right at the end of Arngrim's life. But if he existed like thousands of years before as somebody else's Einherja?
No, that's the idea, because the game is about reincarnation. So essentially all the warriors get reincarnated and to use again for different Valkyries.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, so in this case, Hrist had a past version of Arngrim and Laufer.
And Llewellyn and Mestina, too. Yes, I think they're there.
Okay. Thank you for clearing that up.
Mestina
it's me being dense.
And like Arngrim does appear also in Valkyrie Profile too, so it's kind of a blast from the past. Yeah,
he's like the first. That would make sense. Yeah, because he's like the first ally of Silmeria, and that's thousands of years before Lenneth. So,
yeah, I can't remember the time frame on that, but I think you're right. I think they did try to cover their tracks as best they could, but I know it's not easy. Okay, yeah. So you go to Japan. You meet the 3 mages there who actually play a decent role in the second game. One of them is a very JRPG pretty boy.
Of course.
Oh yeah. He's got like bangs and like a cool chic choker and everything like that.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, he looks Nordic. What was one of the other good ones?
The mages, they conspired against the king. They created the time machine,
conspired.
and they allowed him to take the fall for it.
Yeah.
Well, you return Barbarossa's
Basically,
head to him, or you return his head,
His
and
crown.
his crown.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, because when you go to the past, the queen gives you his crown and says, at least he should die like a king.
But
And you're too late.
She recognizes that you're out of time. She recognizes that you don't belong in that
does.
time. And even when Hrist is walking through town, she recognizes that there's like an anomalous presence of another Valkyrie there.
Yeah, she's
So-
like, wait, I
So
feel
cool.
splendid?
Yeah.
I must be, yeah. She kind of blows it up. She's like, no, that can't be right.
It is cool to see Brahms's capture of Silmeria kind of contextualized as well. Where it's like, who dat? And you find out like Silmeria was kind of held up there because Brahms was trying to protect her. Because again, this whole system that the gods have created is just completely crooked.
Well, I mean, it's in any good story, you will be questioning why you are doing what you are doing, and in Brahms' case, you really do sense this kind of like noble sense that he's trying to do the right thing and that he's not entirely your enemy. Not just because he says I'm not your enemy, but there is this real sense of like he's got his set of morals, and they're not exactly in opposition to yours. It's just the way circumstances have shaken out.
Yeah, I do like when you don't beat his dungeon in time; it just lets you kind of follow through.
Yeah,
It just disappears and you're like in the air.
She'll be fine.
Seems a little
She's already dead. Oh, which reminds me, I'm so excited for Indivisible, which, because Trius doesn't seem to be interested in making Valkyrie Profile-esque games anymore. I'm happy that like Indivisible is giving it a shot.
Don't you want to try that gacha game?
Which one?
There's a Valkyrie gacha game now. I think it's Japanese only. Valkyrie Anatomia?
I did look it up. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, and they do even have their own Valkyrie bikini outfits. So I mean, that's exciting.
Yeah, let's try it. Yeah. Okay.
And
It's
there's
necessary.
And then there's also Covenant of the Plume, which makes me feel like a horrible person every time I play it.
It wasn't good, was it? I don't even remember it. Is what my final verdict was on that.
I remember it being interesting, but not very good.
I just don't remember it.
Yeah, well, it's just because you were like, I don't know, you're using your allies and basically killing them, and like the point is to overkill your enemies. It's too much.
It was a sloppy mix of SRPG and Valkyrie Profile, and it just did not work. Oh man. Why didn't they just give us Valkyrie Profile Hrist, man? That's all we wanted. Infuriatingly,
I wonder how that would work, because Hrist is just so unlikable on every level. And I mean, Lenneth can be unlikable, but Hrist is just like, she is like lawful evil. There doesn't seem like there's much going on in ways of redemption for her.
She has her moments in Valkyrie Profile too, where where she is actually getting conflict, internal conflict, and starts to hate what she does.
What was I going to say? Well, it's interesting because in the original Valkyrie Profile, this is your introduction to her in Japan, and she's basically like destroyed the city, and has just completely upheaved everything.
And just to make the point clear, she's got all black armor and black feathers. Like, I am the evil one, okay?
She's got like this sadistic, like furious smile on her face in her portrait as well. She's relishing in what she's doing.
All of the elves are just angry. They didn't do multiple portraits for the elves, and they're just all angry portraits. And they're wearing some sort of like dirty, like flour sack. Like they all have the same stripe. It doesn't look like the armor in game. Their artwork looks beautiful. The game's artwork is really nice. A few derpy faces, but it's nice. Yeah, they're all just wearing some sort of like flour sack, and I think they kind of ran out of time with those. Yeah.
I can understand the angry sprites when Lazard is dealing with one of the elves, though, because that's pretty awful.
He's torturing them, I think.
Yeah, well, that's how he's...
Yeah, he's turning them into his homunculi.
Homunculi, yeah.
Yeah. I do like, that the story kind of teases out, like, see, if we weren't being so racist against elves, we could have a whole bunch of, like, half-elf, half-human gods. But no, the elves are stupid heads. No, the humans are dummies. Stupid racism. But yeah, no. So I do think it's interesting that God and elf make. No, sorry, elf and human make God, and that's what Odin did, and that's what Odin is. Right? I don't know. Yeah, I don't know why the game sets up half elves as like the pinnacle of everything, but there you go.
It is kind of it's interesting.
It's popular with X-Wolf Team, isn't it? They did that in Tales of Symphonia as well, which was another X-Wolf Team game.
But I don't think they were powerful. They were just kind of ostracized.
Weren't they? Was it the half elves who were oppressing everybody, or was it the true elves in that game?
No. Well, the true elves were just keeping themselves, and they were a bunch of dicks, so they just kind of stayed in their forest.
Who were putting people in the camps?
Half elves,
who were the Nazis?
Yeah, so the half-elves were doing that, but then there's also the set of half-elves who just, took to the sky because nobody else wanted them. They just live in a floating place in the sky because everybody rejects them. It's so sad. Yeah, so, just nobody likes the half-elves, and everybody keeps making half-elf babies. Clearly the elves got something going, that's driving the humans nuts. The Forest of Spirits was a pretty tough dungeon just because I didn't know what to do in that for the longest time.
This is our first dungeon where we're... Sorry, go ahead.
The Ruins of Amnati or whatever, there's like a...
The tomb, yes.
Yeah, that one is the hardest. It goes on forever.
That is a hard difficulty dungeon, isn't it? Yeah, I missed that out.
Yes, it's the Egyptian one. Kind of. I'm going to say, one of the silliest and most fun just kind of events that you kind of puzzle platforming events you have to do is destroying the beards on the giant pharaoh head statues to slide under them so they don't push you out of the room. That just cracked me up.
Okay, so there's also Lysaria that you get in hard mode, and I always liked her sprite because she casts by spinning around and just having one of the louder voices in the game. She's like fire, so she was really cool. You wrote for Chapter 8 there's some sort of oversight, so I'm curious what you were saying about that.
Well, I guess what I meant by saying there's an oversight in Chapter 8 is, it felt like not a lot was happening there. You've already recruited all of your Einherja, and I kind of felt like they were kind of rushing you through to the finish line at that point.
I guess because you don't do the ending stuff, you essentially have no story to tell.
There's a lot more happening
played the rules
in hard
by
mode,
the book.
Huh?
Yeah. You play the rules by the book, so literally you did your duty and you ended the story.
Yeah, you are kind of, you're punished for doing so.
Literally,
with the B ending. It's very much, it feels like an arcade game ending, almost, for B. I mean, you have your final battle against Surt, and anybody who knows their Norse mythology knows that Surt is not the big boy of Ragnarok.
Nope.
And once you finish Surt, you're rewarded with a text scroll of Freya saying "You have done well. Now rest, our heroes. Goodbye." And then the credits roll. And it's there's, it's
but I guess
there is something more happening
right?
here.
Because the whole point is that you do want to rebel. You gotta go fight the gods.
Yeah, I mean, the more you go along the path to the ending, the more it's absolutely 100% clear that if there's a good person in this game, it's actually not Odin or Freya either.
Definitely not.
No, they are doing everything they can to stay in control.
So what was some of the stuff that I definitely didn't care much for Loki as a villain either. He felt very run of the mill. I am evil. I have the dragon orb and the spirit. There's just so many Deus Ex Machina devices in this game, but.
And they also just have him hanging out, which he never really, he didn't really do that in the mythology. So, they kind of pretend that it's a twist of having him, betray the Pantheon, but...
They just kind of trust that he's probably going to be up to some shit, because, hey, it's Loki. That rascal you.
Yeah.
I do like Odin's onesie. And his kind of dual-sided super sword thing. I always thought that it was cool. He's a bit of a pushover though. Odin doesn't really get much done in this. There's so much plot in this game. It definitely doesn't feel like they really milked it for all they could have.
Well, from what I understand, there was more on the cards, but this ended up being quite rushed. So there's a lot more in the design documents than actually made it into the game.
So to start triggering the A ending, I guess we'll kind of fill you in. I guess Hilary and I will kind of fill you in what happens.
Please, I almost got there. I almost got there this time, and I didn't.
So like what it is the entire path of the Valkyrie is that like she does her duty, but what it is you do all these things that lower your seal value because they kind of help you rebel. So you go visit the place where you died, and you kind of have a moment.
They have given her some like serious MK Ultra brainwashing.
Yeah, no, and that's why she says how nostalgic at the beginning of the game, because she's in a flower field in Valhalla, right?
And she's fantasizing about being married as well.
Yeah. I actually never understood that part.
I figured that she was just like thinking about how things could have been, but
yeah,
maybe I'm wrong. I mean, they really don't flesh that out.
Yeah.
But I guess it's like a snatch of her humanity and her romantic nature left over from when she was Platina and felt strongly about Lucian, perhaps.
Yeah, felt strongly about a boy. Yeah. She was about to be sold off to slavery. That's such a sad start of the game, man.
It really sets the tone. Yeah.
Yeah, she's sold off and dies. Anyways. And her mom's a real pill. Okay, so you visit the field where, you know, she dies, and she kind of starts having a moment. She meets Lucian, where she starts getting a whole bunch of funny feelings in her. She meets Brahms, who kind of teases out that the cycle is kind of, you know, meant to just make them work and kind of disregard a lot of their feelings and a lot of what happens. You meet Lazard, who wants to become a god himself, but that kind of plays into what the end game. Yeah, okay, so that's the big one. The whole thing with Lazard doing his Monculi thing is that he essentially saves the game unwittingly, because what it is they tried to destroy Lenneth, and do you know this better than me? I forgot a bit.
Oh no, it's okay. So yeah, basically what happens is you meet all those characters, and in Lazard's case, he knows way more than he should about who Lenneth is and how gods work.
Yeah.
And so the big thing is when you go to send Lucian to Valhalla, I think we already talked about that a little bit, he sort of brings out a lot more of her humanity. And then there's the scene when Lucian's in Valhalla. I think that's what happens next. Lucian goes up, and this is where Loki starts to do his, you know, betrayal, I'm the bad guy sort of thing, as he sets Lucian up.
He tries to talk to Lenneth, and so what it does instead is it just exposes him as a villain instead, and Lucian basically gets kind of written off the story for a little bit.
Yeah, he dies as an Einherjar, which I guess shows that, yes, you can die again, even if you go to Valhalla. And he gets framed for stealing the Dragon Orb, which is a very important artifact.
So the plot gets really convoluted here.
Yeah, so basically, everyone in Valhalla is thinking that Loki kind of saved the day, and Lucian was trying to steal this Dragon Orb. But when Lucian was trying to talk to Valkyrie, he talks about this earring, which presumably was an earring of Platina's. And he keeps trying to give her one of them, and he says something like, I think you'll be able to figure out where the other one is. So if you, very late on in the game, you'll get the meadow again in spiritual concentration, and that's basically how you start the A ending, is you go back there, and the seal totally breaks on her memories, and that's when Odin and Freya say, "Oh, that's not good. We have to seal."
She's got her memories back. We gotta shut her down and bring out the next one right away. Yeah. So what it is that Hrist takes over for a little while, and the two that you can't send, Mystina and Arngrim, who can't be sent, are the ones who kind of instigate, who kind of start putting together getting Valkyrie back. And what they do is they use Lazard Valeth's homunculi that resemble Lenneth anyways. To actually to sort of transmute her into a new body.
Yeah. So basically, Arngrim and Mystina refuse to serve Hrist, just flat out. And
she's a cow. Meanie.
And so Lenneth is still sort of awake, not quite in Valkyrie sleep mode yet, and she protects them. So her consciousness gets kind of shattered. So Lazard shows up, of course, conveniently at the exact right time, tells Mystina to freeze the fragments. So they have kind of pieces of Lenneth's consciousness, but they need Hrist. They need the Valkyrie body as well to bring Lenneth back. So they all figure out that Hrist probably immediately went to go confront Brahms. So then you go to Brahms's castle. And Hrist is there. Brahms is a little offended because Hrist is not at her full power. You know, she's kind of
waking up relatively weak, and he's like, maybe you should have waited, and then the Einherjar show up. Should have used the party experience that I had.
Right. And then Arngrid and Mystina show up with Lazard. So all of them actually end up confronting Hrist, and you fight her. And you get the necessary pieces to do basically the same kind of ritual that Odin and Freya would do, and you awaken Lenneth.
So what it is that Lazard, being all power trippy, he wanted the homunculi, which are half elf and human, which essentially is a god, and they put Lenneth in there, which effectively makes her into a goddess. So she kind of gets bumped up after all the events. So she comes back as essentially a half elf, half human, which makes her one of the most powerful beings in existence, through pure luck. She made friends with the right people, and they help her come back as a goddess. And so with
in this
that
nihilistic tale, even the power of friendship will prevail.
Aww. So essentially that's what happens. So where the B ending feels very, very standard, you beat
very
the
abrupt.
bad guy and the ending happens. Yeah, so this one is essentially you did everything right and all the pieces fit into play. You learn about the homunculi, you actually get to become one of the homunculi, you become a god. And so what it is when Ragnarok happens, you actually become the one, and the world essentially gets destroyed, all of it becomes completely obliterated. You still survive and you're able to bring it all back.
Yeah, you basically something I was reading, I wish I could remember exactly what it was, put it really well when they said basically the entire world becomes her Einherjar, which is kind of...
Yeah, that's what she does, right? She just sort of brings it back.
Like Magica Magica.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so the ending consists of she comes back, and it's Loki you're confronting, Loki has challenged Odin kind of in the meantime, and Odin had to split his power to protect Freya, I think. So things are really, really bad. So Lenneth is the one who ends up having to take him down.
Like such a chump, man.
Yeah.
Odin, no! Yeah, and Freya gets her last, very tear-filled speech. But you also do start to see Lenneth, completely break down. When she does kind of come back, she just comes back crying. She's so sad that she treated Lucian like crap. She's so sad that she, the love of her previous life was, she just sent him away and she couldn't see him again. She finds the earring that he wanted her to have, and she's just breaking down completely. Yeah,
she has this whole thing of who really left who, because now you were an Einherjar, but you were just gone. Yeah, you died as an Einherjar, so I'm alone now.
And so when she confronts Freya at the end too, she's like, why do you care about these humans? She's like, why don't you? They're the same. They're also living their lives. They're also feeling tragic. All sorrow is all loss is sorrow.
You spend this whole game, you see all these tragic stories of humanity and the cruelty of just how unfair life is, but playing as Lenneth, up until this point, you are completely detached. The matters of the human world aren't really any business of yours, other than just, recruiting soldiers for your divine war. So
it's actually good to have your perspective on that too.
Yeah.
Because you kind of see how it plays out if you do just kind of, stay the course.
Do your job.
Yeah, you just did your job and that's it.
Yeah.
So it's a good perspective to have of yours, because, the entire end game completely changes otherwise.
Oh, so I have a question for both of you. Favorite Einherjar from, I guess, Chapter 3 on that we haven't talked about yet?
I actually really liked Lorenta. I just like the way she just stands there and her rod just kind of floats around her. Mm-hmm. I always thought that was actually really cool looking. All the mages are basically the same in that game, so I didn't mind just keeping her there. I was just like, yeah, okay, you stay put.
Yeah, Lorenta was my go-to mage, just by virtue of how much cool charisma she had. I liked her a great deal, much for the same reason as you. She's a tough headmistress who has a keeps her cool, even though she has the worst thing happens to her.
And who's that unfortunate girl who accompanies 4 different Einherjar? She's the only one to live, and she
Celia.
Celia, she looks so sad.
She's part of the
always
mercenaries band
pouty.
with Arngrim and Lawfer and Cashel and
I
Gray.
mentioned her last time. It gets worse when you recruit Gray.
Yeah. Do tell, Hilary.
The whole point of a lot of their group was to track Gray down and like figure out why some really awful stuff happened. And she's the only one left by the time they find him. She finds him and basically, why did this happen, Gray? And she starts to threaten him, and then she drops her sword and goes, I can't do it. I can't threaten you because if I did, I'd be completely alone. And then Gray basically just goes, I'm sorry, and disintegrates and becomes one of your Hyneriar, leaving her completely alone.
Completely alone. And she collapses. Like, everyone has a sad ending. And, like, it doesn't help that her face already looks so sad and pouty to begin with. Like, she just was born to look sad. So she's the only one left. Gray disintegrates. Oh, God, there's so many good characters in this game. Hang on. I know there's a few late game players that I just stopped bothering with, too, so that kind of makes me sad.
I wasn't too fond of many of the late game characters. I like Jael quite a bit, and her story.
Her story was good too.
She's not a great damage dealer. Her Purify Weird Soul hits a lot, which is good, but her story is great. She's this kind of like Mulan figure, where she has disguised herself as a man to join the military in Krell-Monfrand, and she's uncovered by her captain, Fawn. And he keeps her secret because the two of them fall in love. And
like,
they both plot to assassinate Magnus, who's a member of this theocracy who rules Krell-Monfrand, because he's...
What a history in this game that they take you through, and it's kind of cool that some of them kind of link into each other.
So he's a member of this theocracy, and he is supposedly a member of some strange, like, devil-worshipping cult. And once he's confronted by Fawn and Jael, he summons this demon temptress, Genevieve, who casts this charming spell, which renders all the men immobile. But it doesn't work on Jael because she's a lady, and this is a heteronormative fairy tale.
So, of course, there's the moment of, wait, why didn't this work on you? Oh,
that's right.
You're a woman.
So, it's revealed at that point that both Jael and Fawn used each other. They both, like, Fawn knew that Jael was a woman, so he was going to use her to confront Genevieve, whereas Jael knew that Fawn would be an in to taking down Magnus. So they both had the same goal, but were coming at it from different devious angles. And Fawn, due to the charm of Genevieve, ends up running Jael through, and that's how she joins us as an Einherja.
Yeah, it's super frustrating too, because you fight Genevieve, like Valkyrie shows up, and she fights with Genevieve. Well,
I do like that Valkyrie shows up to kind of clean up some of the mess that these characters make before they die.
Yeah, I kind of like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Or it's like she'll show up because like stuff is wrong, and just kind of how you're doing your dungeon runs. Oh hey, Valkyrie showed up here too now. So I think that's actually pretty cool.
Yeah,
it all
you've
fits the
made
game.
that big a mess to attract Valkyrie's attention.
I was going to say Genevieve's actually pretty interesting, because this is another person who maybe knew Valkyrie before, and also teases Jael a little bit and says, "Oh yeah, you think you've used each other, but that's really also just hiding your true feelings." So I don't know. So you fight her, and then once you defeat her, she's like, "Oh, okay, but you might want to pay attention to what's going on behind you." And you see that Fawn has just stabbed Jael.
One thing I will say, like, in terms of characters, I don't know how many in the late game I liked, just because I tried to stay with a lot of mine. I always kept Arngrim in just because he was a good heavy damage dealer. But it's the dungeons that honestly kept me coming back, just because I loved how unique they were and how much fun they were to play through. And I loved just being able to bounce around and like create crystals and all that stuff. and fight different enemies of different mythologies and all that.
I wish there was a little bit more going on with the dungeons, and like some mechanics seem like kind of underutilized. Like the using like the shattered crystal step thing only happens maybe twice near the end, which doesn't really.
I didn't mind that just because I hated the way it was programmed, and it took me forever to understand it. Because of course this game doesn't really explain it very good.
I mean, I hated the way it was programmed too, but like if they did a better job explaining it and maybe teaching you how to do it, instead of just like having you puzzle it out at the 11th hour.
You do it a lot more on hard mode, like a lot more.
Ah, that makes sense.
If you have a chance, try to play it again for the A ending. I think you'll see a pretty dramatic difference.
I very much like to, and I've got a save at chapter 4, so I probably will load that up and go for A at some point.
The dungeons you get in hard mode are especially really interesting, and it is one of those games because the game actually gives you way better equipment in the A ending. It's actually more easy in some instances.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. Like I said, the only two exceptions are, of course, the Tower of Lizard Ballast, which is incredibly hard, and the Ruins of Amneti. The Tomb of Amneti. I forgot. I always forget how to pronounce it, and I don't read it close enough. Did you guys do the Seraphic Gate as well?
Only a little bit.
I have been to the Seraphic Gate in the past. I didn't go this time, but I have been trounced by hamsters, so I know that is a thing, and that is a thing that I very much like.
It's just cool to see some of the like what is it? You get Brahms.
You get Brahms and Lizard.
Yeah,
and
Brahms,
Freya.
Lizard, and Freya as secret characters for unfortunately just that one dungeon. But they are the best.
One of the issues with the Seraphic Gate is like there's no way back from it, is there? So
no,
it's like
it's self-contained. It's sort of sad that way.
Yeah, I mean, like kind of. I always kind of felt like, oh, what's the point of like going through this dungeon and.
I don't even think it's that hard,
cool
so
items,
it's not even a really good challenge. It's just there to just milk a few extra things, and that's it.
It's just there. But, like, you can't take anything back to the main game. It's just that thing. So
this is one of those games that will give you incredibly difficult normal encounters.
Yeah.
Like, some of them will just, like, OHKO you in an instant. Yeah, and at the end of the game, you start needing to get those, like, counter skills and the auto-revive or the guts. It was like that they call it guts, like... hanging on.
No, it's and even like if you're lazy or trying to rush, you'll be using those in the main game too.
Yeah. Yeah, because some of the end game bosses basically just do a Purify Weird Soul every single turn, so essentially you need that to live.
Yeah, that's nasty.
Yeah, but it's the challenge though. It makes you all that much more satisfied at the end. You're like, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the examples I was thinking of when I said this is a game that sort of wants you to like defy the conventions and break it a little bit. The fact that they have a skill that means running out of HP really isn't as much of an issue.
Your levels don't really matter as much as the skills that you give your characters, I think. The dungeons are just really nicely designed too. Like, again, I love how they all have their own identity. I'm gonna I played a bit of it. I do have most of the game memorized, but I'm probably gonna like start it up again actually because I really love it. Like I said before, like I think Valkyrie is like one of my favorite female protagonists for being hard, for being soft, for letting her fall in love, for letting her be about her duty, for not letting love be what makes her weak. She
really breaks the mold from other female JRPG protagonists. They
like,
did an excellent job with her.
Like in the sort of tens of this decade, like we had Lightning and the Two Tails ones, so Mila and Velvet, who were just very stoic for most of the game. They're just very cold and hard people for most of the game, and that's cool. Like sure, you got to have your tough heroine in there, but I don't know, it's just not as flexible, I guess. Yeah, and I always thought Valkyrie was a very self-contained, powerful heroine on her own. I love her with a bow and arrow, by the way.
Yeah.
I kept her with a bow and arrow for most of it.
Me too. Yeah, it's interesting. It makes her feel like a very, very complete character as opposed to, I think, some of the others who are just like kind of stoic and hard for most of the game because it's harder to see that
birthday
growth.
Ever.
It's harder to see that growth. It's harder to see them as like a complete person.
Yeah. Yeah, and I actually like that Valkyrie felt pretty flexible in terms of personality. It was still cold, it was still hard, because she had a very important duty bestowed upon by the gods and all that. But when she does break the mold, like you see a complete breakdown of her character and a whole 180 of her entire design. Yeah, and it's great that they brought her voice actress back for the second game, and I guess they let them have more than one shot at lines, so she was a bit more dramatic.
Maybe sounded like it wasn't recorded in a bathtub.
Oh yeah, it was still pretty good for voice acting at the time.
I don't know, like, good luck understanding what anybody's saying during spiritual concentration.
Okay. Not a clue.
Oh yeah.
With all the too much reverb on there.
Yeah, you can't. And some of them are really. It's like from the darkness of the below weight. All the. It's like okay, just kill them, please. I did like the timing aspect for a lot of this too. The timing aspect of the battle system. Like I think it's such a cool battle system. Tri-Ace, what happened to you? Where have you gone?
Well, you know, Tri-Ace, I'm not a big fan of what Tri-Ace is doing at the moment in terms of their own games, but I mean, they contributed to...
they help a lot of other companies out, right?
Yeah, they worked on the battle systems for Lightning Returns and Final Fantasy 15. So, I mean, like, I think that those were okay.
Battle system, like, that's a thing. Tri-Ace has always excelled at least on a gameplay aspect, less story. I think this is literally Valkyrie Profile is the only game where I actually really got invested in the story. The other
I think it is by far like it's their best story.
I'm gonna say most complete. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like by my own biased standards, I think it's like their only story that's really saying something.
Have you played Radiata Stories?
I sure have.
The end game for that one is just so upsetting.
What is going on in that game? That game is crazy.
It's such a hot mess, yeah. And like the game kind of urges you to take the non-human path, but it is such a depressing story either way you go.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing good with the way that
depressing
game
adventures
does
of Jack Russell.
Yeah. Of this poor dog man, of this poor dog boy, and his doomed relationship with a pigtailed haired girl. Yeah, that game was depressing, and I hated it. I like the stuff in town, and I like the lighthearted pace of everything, but then all of a sudden the game gets way too serious. At least Valkyrie Profile, it kind of sets the tone and keeps the tone.
It's a rare JRPG that does keep that tone all the way through. I mean, even in
it's pretty
a lot
consistent,
of the more even a lot of more serious JRPGs, they have like moments of levity that are a bit ill-fitting, but there's very, very little of that here. There's just like, you know, Jolanda eats all the food and causes a scene, and then you fight some hamsters. But like in between that, it's just like, well, this is just a bad time for everybody. And like, it's kind of bad almost to being the point of parody, almost, but I really respected its commitment to its grim tone.
Yeah, and I mean, some of the other moments I can think of are like Miss Dina and Arngrim talking, and probably a little bit in Badrock's story too, just with Valkyrie just kind of being like, okay, I don't have time for this.
But still, it's not
you are
like,
not a good person.
It's not like Badrock doing pratfalls. It's Badrock explaining just like how bad he is and thinking that it's, you know, an achievement. So it's comic relief, but it's fitting with the tone.
Yeah, it's more like absurd and still kind of dark.
Yeah,
Blizzard is a
it's
mad
very
genius,
dark.
so if he sounds weird and goofy, it's because he is just a little bit insane. You know? And like even the second game, like they had their moments of levity, but for the most part, like it had a very good, tragic, romantic kind of tone to it. But yeah, it's a shame you don't really see any more from the series anymore, and I know people would love it, and people are still really, really into this game, and it's a shame they haven't even done like a PlayStation Vita port or anything like that.
I give it a huge number of points for storytelling. Like, it's not perfect, but different. I think it's right. They utilize such a different method of storytelling than you often see in JRPGs. That
they
do it. The entire style of this game. If you're really confused going in, it's because there's no game that actually works like this,
right?
You know, that has you from the perspective of God looking down, you know, and switching chapters and periods, and you know, running on a limited time, but not like it's a very weird game, and I think a lot of people have really come around to it because it is so cool in the end.
I would very much like to see this game and Silmeria ported to like Vita, and you know, in Silmeria's case for PS4. I don't know if I would trust. I don't know if I would trust Tri-Ace to do like a Valkyrie Profile Frist at this stage, because I mean, even
I was going to say, what was that other game that they actually did that was a lot like this?
It
takes place in the afterlife. Yeah, that's it. Exist Archive, which I heard was kind of middling as well.
Alana reviewed it and she did not like it at all.
Dang.
So
I think that one probably hit a bit too close to the kind of JRPG tropes, where again it's just kind of a little silly in bad ways.
Yeah.
It doesn't quite hit an emotional tone without kind of sabotaging it with weird humor.
But like, I do believe that like Valkyrie Profile and Star Ocean 5 had the same script writer, so it's like, well,
God.
what happened there? I mean, I think if they did a Valkyrie Profile now, it would be full of like squealing little girls in underwear, and like I don't want to know about that.
When you first run into Miki in Star Ocean 5, it's like, hey, isn't that Miki? I can't believe she's already 18. It's like, oh. Is that what we first needed to hear? Like,
Platina, why are your boobs so much bigger than mine? So, I think what we got is near miraculous in how
for real.
Just
like,
how
even
it turned out.
Star Ocean 2 was probably the second best effort for at least kind of being consistent. But yeah, these games are all over the place with their story. I don't know. Come on, Trice. We want you to come back. We loved you. What was it though? But yeah, out of 10, what would you rate this? How many Einherjars out of 10?
Oh my.
A Laufer out of 10, which is a 10 out of 10. I like his voice too. It's like, when he misses his Purify Weird Soul, it's like, I shall take you down, and like you don't kill them. It's like, fine, I shall strike again. Tammy in the best ways.
Yeah.
Fine, I shall blow again. Oh my god. Okay.
Oh yeah, when he's starting it, it's like it's both sides of it. It's like when he starts it, he's like, I'll stake everything on this final blow, and then like,
yeah, that's right.
Oh,
fine, I shall strike again.
There will be another time.
I do like. I actually really do love Jalanda too. I think her character was just absolutely a laugh riot.
She's great. What it was. Yeah.
Yeah, that spoiled princess thing really worked, and I loved seeing her sprite get mad and wearing a silly bonnet. Yeah,
her face turns red, and then like all the color
knew right away it was her too, right?
Yeah, of course he did. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like it's a bonnet and glasses. Of course, I know who you are. You're Clark Kent disguised. Stop for me.
You send her up to Valhalla. Like if you choose to send her up to Valhalla, she like gets really pushy with the gods, and they're like, "Come on, lady, you can't do this here."
I like how when she
send her back, just send her back.
I like how when her exploits are recognized, she's always like, "Don't worry, the Vanir aren't going to win while I'm here. Everything's gonna be
fine." Oh my god, yeah. So.
Did anything particularly interesting happen in Valhalla with any of your Einherjar? Because I think the most interesting thing that happened to me is immediately when I sent Laufer up, like I got a lot of his worst.
You sent him up?
I did.
Bad person.
I know.
But
I immediately got all of his negative, like -5 hero value events, where geez. How dare you refuse to torture people and like let wounded prisoners escape? That's not what Valkyrie taught you. Like, I have no idea. I don't know either.
I didn't have a lot interesting going on.
Please play the game again. Get the A ending and let us know what you think. Because it's really worth it to just kind of see like how everything kind of turns out. For the most part, though, the A ending does have a very abrupt ending as well. Like she kisses her man and like roll credits. So I think it's great that the second game actually really picks up nicely from where the first game sort of leaves off. Yeah, because they kind of catch up on some of the missing elements of the first game, where they just kind of ended it and said, "All right, wrap it up, package it out."
It's been so long since I played that second game. I'd have to give it another look. I mean, I am curious, but I also have some bad memories. So
it's so hard.
Yeah.
Like the main game in that game is ridiculously difficult. You have to use those like pedestals and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Like,
the environment, right? The seal stone.
You need those basically. You have to use those. You're going to get your ass completely whooped. Yeah.
You do, and it's like every time you go into a new dungeon, it's impossible until you find the dais, remove whatever awful seal stone is there.
There's a few good ways to kind of tease out the game where it's like if you beat a certain chapter with story characters really high leveled, you get some super gear, which really helps because again, some of the second half dungeons are again incredibly difficult because you're on your own. It's like wow. I think Rufus is the only good story character. Everybody else in that game is completely subpar.
Yeah,
even Alicia.
I remember them all being a bit of a write-off.
But I used them. I was like, oh, okay, hey, it's Lazard. I bet he's good, and he was not.
almost worth it for the ridiculous like battle sayings. Almost.
Absolutely. We should totally do a Valkyrie Profile 2-1. We'll give ourselves like half a year to do it. Yeah, we'll give ourselves a lot of time to kind of let it. And I think Trias games were notoriously difficult to Game Shark too. So like even if you just wanted to get through it with Game Shark, the game does not let you do it easily.
Okay. Yeah,
to bypass it, there was like 20 lines of code that you had to type in. It was ridiculous.
Wow.
Yeah, so Valkyrie Profile does not make it easy to love, but when you do, it's really easy to love.
It's also surprisingly breezy for a JRPG of this era, especially Trias games, which tend to be like
how do you mean? I'm curious.
70 hours, and I managed to get to the B ending in a good 25 hours this time around. So
that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure it would have been longer if I was doing hard mode with all of those horrible dungeons, but...
Oh, they will really test your patience, some of them. Some of them are just incredibly tough. I think there's like a fire dungeon one, too, that just same thing, just really makes you work timing. That's it.
That's the first place where the platforming really gets a lot more complicated, I think, because that's when you really have to learn to use the glowy trick steps.
Yeah. Did you guys like when you press select and you have like one of two themes either go the dungeon one or the dramatic in a ding 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 ding. I'm tone deaf. But like you know you kind of hear people kind of crying out. Thank you. You kind of hear people either dying or if it's the dungeon theme, you're like, all right, where are we going? And then finally some of the really tough dungeons start to pop up, and you're like, oh shit, this one.
You're like, no,
I remember this one.
Go away, like, Tombs of Amenti.
They're difficult, but I feel good after every time I beat them.
Yeah.
And they give you that victory music as you're running out, right?
That is some cool victory music.
Yeah.
Oh, Mike, end the podcast with this song. I will find it for you.
I think we might have ended the last episode with it.
Oh, dang it. Yeah. We'll find some good tracks.
Yeah, we will.
I think I've spoken my piece, though. I love this game, and I'm so glad you guys let me come into the podcast halfway through.
Oh, no,
I'm so happy to talk about it.
It was great to have you. I'm sorry we couldn't have you in the first episode, but
Any final thoughts that we got to wrap up with?
Yeah, Hilary, you go right ahead.
What did you think?
I will just say that I'm really, 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 really glad that I played through on hard mode. It is a huge difference.
It's intimidating at first, and it's so easy to kind of go like hard mode, but it is probably the best mode to take on. And you know, when you do get it, and when you finally get your A rank cutscenes and all that stuff, it is an incredibly satisfying run.
Yeah,
I think Valkyrie Profile has aged incredibly well.
It has
for a 18-year-old PlayStation 1 JRPG.
2D games really do though. Like PlayStation 2D games have aged very, very well.
I had a really good time playing through this again, and was impressed at how just how much fun its combat system could be, and how much fun I had navigating its world. I do wish that it explained certain things slightly better, and I mean, good luck getting that A ending without a guide, and even with a guide, if you just like mess up one small thing like I did.
There's a pretty concise one on GameFAQs that just gives you the basic bullets that you need, and tells you when you botched it. I also do want to give a big round of applause to its actual use of even realistic portraits in this game. I feel like a lot of JRPGs just stick with the very anime look, and you know, it's only Final Fantasy and maybe Capcom games that have kind of ventured out of it.
And this is very much something else, very kind of like painterly style for all the characters.
It works, yeah. I feel it really worked, and Valkyrie looks so good in every one of her portraits.
Yeah.
You know, to draw her helmet every time must have been very difficult.
And you've got these very well animated sprites who, as opposed to the more realistic portraits, they're kind of cartoony and, they pull some very expressive and silly faces, but the two taken together, I think there's an odd disconnect there, but one that's not wholly at odds with the rest of the game's aesthetics, and that, it really...
That's a good point. For its era, it does look like a very painterly art style, which feels something that would be within the realm of the game.
I like it a lot.
Some of them have a bit too much chipmunk cheek going on, but I mean, it's still very good. I actually really love Koinyo Yoshinari. Like, I have one of his art books. He's one of my favorite artists of all time.
I thought Jolanda looked a little too much like a 8-year-old when she was not meant to be that young. She looks like a baby.
Yeah.
But, I mean, fortunately, it's not Star Ocean 5, so she's not a sexy baby.
Oh, God. Those are two words that do not need to be beside each other. How dare you? Oh, they did that with Rena in Star Ocean 2 when they put her on PSP. She went from looking like a really cool 17-year-old tomboy in the PlayStation version to, like, this, like, tiny little 12-year-old with like a cute button nose and adorable little cheeks.
I love the kind of like rough and ready kind of sketched art for the original Star Ocean 2, and then it just got so cleaned up to the point of being derivative in that PSP re-release.
Yeah, so Tri-Ace's highlights during the PlayStation era were just unbeatable. Yeah. People still brag about the last good Star Ocean game, which most unanimously agree was the second one. Sadly, because it's a series we all want to love and
keeps tricking us. We shouldn't have fallen for Edge Maverick.
You know what though? If Star Ocean 4 continued that kind of sci-fi space planet jumping idea, I think it could have been the coolest. I think it was actually really inspired by like Star Trek and all that, and they should have just kind of kept going with it. But then they threw in some weird love lines, like a young girl falling in love. God damn it, sexy baby plot lines. Yeah, like what happened?
I don't know. Somebody was just too horny on Maine. Is that it? Have we done Valkyrie Profile?
We talked it. We definitely talked it up.
I think we've done it. It's been a joy. Well, next week we are covering JR.
Oh wait, out of 10,
yes.
How many
on
Harriet? Out of 10, yeah. How many feathers in the cap for this one? This is a 10 out of 10 game for me. Flaws aside, you can't skip the death scenes, but fine, whatever. It's a 10 out of 10 for me.
Hilary, what do you think?
I'm kind of mulling it over a little bit. I mean, I would rate it really, really highly too, but
it's got its issues. It definitely
does, and I've been too attached to it for a long time though, so I'd probably put it really high up there too, like a 9-ish.
Probably a 9 for me as well. It's got one of my favorite scripts of JRPGs, and its tone is completely on point.
It can surprisingly be a quotable game, which is something very few games can actually own up to.
Nibelung Valesti, that means nothing at all.
But it sure looks badass.
It's pulled off with such panache that who cares? Probably a 9 for me as well. It's really, really good.
Have you come back when you get the A ending just to do a little soliloquy podcast of your own?
Just an epilogue.
I don't think anybody wants that, but I think you gals have done a good job covering that today.
Deal.
Next week we are covering RPG spin-offs, where we are talking about games that have spun off from RPGs, whether that
You don't say! With that title?
Who would have thought? Whether that be Persona Dancing All Night or other games of that ilk, we'll leave it to you to find out. And in 2 weeks, we are doing Planescape Torment for a month of WRPG content, which is something that we haven't done for a very long time. So do stay tuned for that.
We just agree that Pokemon has the best spin-offs?
Well,
how dare you? Pokemon Puzzle League is in a league of its own.
Puyo Puyo. But
dang.
Anyway.
Yeah, that's true. They've all copied each other there.
If you want to email us, you can write in at retro@rpgfan.com, or you can comment on the boards, or visit our Facebook page at rpgfan.com. You can review us on iTunes or Google Play or any of those podcast listening venues. We love feedback, and we read all of your letters, and we read as much as we can on the show. So do continue to write in. Folks, Steph, where can people find you on the World Wide Web if they want to get in touch?
If they want to get in touch, usually you can chat with me on the site. I do handle social media, so you'll be talking with me a lot there. If you want to subscribe to me personally, though, I am Dice at on Twitter, Facebook, Tumblr, a whole bunch of places. Just type in Dice SMS and you'll find me.
Hilary, how about you?
I'm EP Fire on the boards, and that's the best way to find me.
And you can find me on Twitter at Misanthrobob, and I've got a crass Instagram under the name Sticky Lake. So follow me there for pictures of my cat and rude comments.
Borscht?
Yeah.
Aww.
He is sleeping on the couch right now, and he's looking real good.
Aww.
Yeah.
Oh, Borscht. All right, thank you so much, guys, for letting me on this podcast. I had so much fun talking with you all.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah,
It's been a real
us too.
treat.
Thanks for joining.
I'd love to do it again. Again, we should do Valkyrie Profile, and we should do Star Ocean. We should get some of the best of Triace out of the way.
Yeah, that is a real oversight on Retro Encounter. So I know that Alana's been wanting to do Second Story as well. So we should really get onto that at some point.
That's a game I literally have memorized. I already know where all the items are and everything too. That's the
Wow.
one game I got like it all memorized.
You doing that like pressing the square button and using the thief glove on the little girl and all that nonsense
Literally,
that they
I
don't
have
explain?
Ernest in my party just so I can steal his stuff. Because you get some of the really good items that you can actually snatch off. I never said I was a moral person. I never said I was a role model.
Just stay tuned, folks. Maybe we'll have something along those lines for you in the future. But until next time, thank you for
Until
listening.
next time.
And we'll see you next
Thanks.
week.
Bye.
Panel, about your performance. It is magnificent. These are all the materialized points I can grant you at this time. The Lord Odin is pleased with you. He bids me give you these artifacts.